Hang on. Oh, it's live. My button said it is live, then it said it's off air, then it said it's live. So we are live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Game Audio Hour number, what is this, 46? Yeah, it's 46. It's our weekly podcast where we discuss all things game audio, from creative ideas to the latest techniques, project experiences to audio secrets. Here's where you'll find in-depth coverage and opinions related to game audio. Vince is at home. What's up, buddy?
Oh man, it's home sweet home. It's always fun trying to work at home. It's been a while, so it feels like I forgot how to do it, and so trying to get myself back in gear. But yeah, just got a few more things to do before Christmas hits, and then I'll be ready to enjoy my holiday, I think.
Are you going anywhere?
No, just doing the staycation thing.
No. I can tell you how to work from home. First, you sleep until 11. That's step number one.
All right. Okay. I think I can do that.
There's no
Mike. I'm going to Mike Shapiro. Mike, you got any tips on working from home?
Yes. Actually, crack the whip on yourself and follow a real workday schedule, or you will find yourself sleeping until noon and then reading email until 3, and then doing some industry research with your PlayStation, and all of a sudden it's 4:30, which is awfully close to 5:30, and then you're done. So to countermand all of those very natural habits, really take the 8 to 6 or 9 to 5 or 9 to 7, whatever it is you set out for yourself, take it seriously. And I know that's a total downer given that we were approaching this from a light and fun perspective, but it's something I learned after many years of doing this.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Not that Vince doesn't know. I'm sure he's got his own plan.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to say hi to the chat room. We've got a bunch of people out there. One of our absolute favorites and a friend of the show, Frida. Frida, get well. She got, I think, bit by her cat and had to go through some stuffs. So, Frida, we hope you heal quickly. And I wish we would have had Frida on last show because we were kind of scrambling for ideas. We ended up going VO. So we'll get you back on if you'll come back on.
What Kyle means is we have always felt passionate about the subject of VO, and we look for any opportunity to discuss it with our readership. This was planned 8 months in advance, and we were really excited to have that show, and it's just too bad Frida couldn't join us. Isn't that what you meant, Kyle?
Yeah, isn't that what I said?
Exactly.
No,
You got your own Kyle Johnson spin on that, yeah.
You guys have put me in a corner. I love VO. That's why we chose that when we didn't know what we were going to talk about. We're like, let's talk about VO. If you try to pull a trick on me, I'll hit you with my remote. Or as Bridget always calls it, her memote, which we thought was a very apt term for this thing, because usually somebody has it. It should be called a memote. Okay, enough of the good jokes. Thank you for laughing. So today we're going to do our year-end retrospective and talk about all the awesome things that have happened in the game industry. And also, even though it's not the year anniversary of our show, we haven't done it quite for a year. We're like 6 episodes short, right? Yeah. But it is the end of the year, and we wanted to just kind of go over the year in gaming and talk about all the awesome things that have happened. So I would say number one is we started this show.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
It is awesome. You know, it's kind of interesting that because a lot of people would talk about, besides this show, a lot of other people getting on video broadcasting. So Twitch has been around for a while, and I'm sure that you guys have followed things like PewDiePie, Twitch plays Pokemon, the whole video webcasting of game playing, along with other content, shows like ours, has been really big in the last year. So that's just changed my world, quite honestly. That's a huge thing.
Yeah, there's been lots of stuff. We even thought about going on to Twitch and broadcasting from there. We're still thinking about going with a Skype situation and customizing our recording and then pushing it rather than going through Google, because we do end up with these hang-ups and stuff. So we apologize for the year of weird hang-ups with the Google, but I'm grateful that Hangouts lets us get together like this and have conversations, and I especially like our green room episodes when we kind of, like, as Mike calls them, when we just sit around and shoot the stuff and just come up with ideas, because it's funny when we plan a show, we have really, I think, really good topics. But it's always those in-between conversations that I think that I enjoy the most, just seeing where it goes. What about you, Mike?
Those moments are fun. You know, it's hard to make them happen, and as soon as we start rolling, I think it's natural to stiffen up and to care about what you're saying and be a little less extemporaneous, which I think is why, sorry watchers, but as soon as the on-air light goes off, everyone just kind of relaxes and starts goofing off. And sometimes there's this weird magic that happens when we have no expectations for ourselves and we just start free associating on a topic, obviously, not just goofing off about whatever, but on some topic that we were just discussing in the show. So that stuff's a lot of fun, and you know, I was hoping maybe we'd capture a little bit of that today, even though we have a bit of a skeleton crew in terms of our turnout.
Yeah, we definitely need to throw a shout out to Alex and to Jack and to Ian and to Matt, all for being part of this show. All the guests that have been on the show, we've had some fantastic guests. And obviously, I think the guest shows are the ones that people want to see. I mean, let us know in Twitter, Facebook, let us know in this chat room, you know, what your favorite subject was. It'll give us some fodder to go on with this information. But also, when I look at the viewer list, it's like always our guest shows are much higher than our regular shows. There have been a couple of instances where it's just us talking about a topic and the show got a lot of viewership. But the great thing about it is it's consistently growing. And I can't thank everybody enough for checking us out. It was just a fluke thing. Like, I think 2 years ago I thought about doing this. Actually, I went searching for it. Did I ever tell you guys the story why I thought it might be a good idea to do this?
Well, we haven't told them, or our readers, our viewership, so why don't you let us all know?
Maybe they don't want to know, so I'll just be quiet. No, I'm kidding. Now is not the time. Okay, so like 2 years ago, there's some things about the game industry that are consistent, like having trouble finding gigs. You know, how do you find gigs? And Tommy Tallarico's done such a great job with Gang and getting all that information out there, and IGDA is also very helpful in your local chapter. And what I really love about game audio guys is they're so open about, I mean gals, excuse me, they're so open about their industry, their experience, good or bad. You know, pay. I've had people flat out tell me, here's what I got paid for a contract, and you should be, you know, probably around here. And that's so helpful. But I also feel very uncomfortable asking for that information, even though I know that, you know, somebody might give it up. You know, I don't know that person really well, kind of reaching out through Twitter and asking, hey, I'm going to go work on, you know, some gig, and I know you worked on a similar gig. What was your experience? Seems uncomfortable. And so I thought, you know, maybe what I can do is talk some of my friends into doing a show, and we can just put it out every week. And just kind of give people that knowledge before they have to ask for it. Because that's what I was doing. I was looking for it in a way that I didn't have to ask for it. So I thought it might be interesting to do the show. And I reached out to everybody like a couple of years ago, but our schedules were so tight. And the next thing you know, a year is gone. And then I just kind of said, okay, we're doing it. Who's still in? And here we are. Thank you.
At the kind of episodes we've done in 2014, that's how I make it. That's how I tie it into the year-end wrap-up thing. If you look at the episodes we've done this last year, it looks like it breaks down into a couple of categories. We've had a couple of interview episodes with Frida, Gerard, Marino, and Noah Snyder, and many other folks. It's been probably about a third of our episodes once we got up and running, if that sounds right.
Yeah.
We've had a bunch of how-to episodes where we talk about soundware, you know, orchestral and non-orchestral. We've had an unusually disproportionate number of episodes on like mods and tracker and some software that recalls the music composition of yesteryear. I can only say this without Alex present because he'd be fuming otherwise. So there's been kind of the roll up your sleeves and how to do this sort of thing and reviews of sample libraries and stuff. And I think we've been fairly light on news. We've touched on current events occasionally, but we haven't tried to be here are three guys talking about the stuff we all read in NextGen, .biz or whatever your game news. And I think that's to our credit because that's covered so thoroughly elsewhere, and it's hard to be current when you have a once-a-week show. Are there any other categories of show that you feel like we've done that I'm missing?
Black MIDI.
That is right.
God.
Black MIDI is its own category.
Sorry, I'm dealing with
You've
a.
about covered it there.
What'd you say?
I think that's about right. You know, all that stuff that we've covered.
Yeah.
There's part of me that wonders actually about whether we should go into more detail on some of these things. You know, obviously we have these our methods of doing things, and kind of dovetailing from before that. What if we actually thought about streaming our actual work process in this show? So, you know, this for all three of us are actually in SoCal. It's kind of the end of the workday for us, but just putting it out there, you know, both to you guys as well as to the people in the chat room. You know, what if we just shared our screen and talked about what it was that we were doing in our particular work, and just broadcasted it out there?
I love that idea. I love that idea. Yeah.
It might require a little intelligent excerpting, unless someone wants to watch you in real time and just have like 8 hours of Vince at work, which actually could be cool. But it might be nice to also have a distilled version where you kind of get some segments of different aspects of a workday, and not sit there while someone drills down in their file directory and looks for files and opens things and things crash and you curse, and the kind of pedestrian stuff.
Right. Yeah, it would be nice if it was excerpted, but all of us here. So what if it was something along the lines of, you know, here is something that I'm doing at work, and I blank out some file names or whatever, and I'll show some of the things that I'm actually doing with converting some sound files, or trying to respond to a request to change the quality of certain sounds, or starting a new piece of music. And that could be not a full multi-day experience doing that, but perhaps, you know, a little 5-minute, 10-minute overview of what it is I'm going to do or what I'm going to dive into. And that could just be 5 to 10 minutes, and then person might want to talk about what it is they're doing at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's a great format. You know, some of the long stuff, I've done some long form videos like that, and that's not for the show, but touching up, when I see somebody working on something, man, my brain lights up and I go, oh my God, even if it's some sort of shortcut they're using on a keyboard, I go, I didn't know that was there. You know, I think it's super helpful to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I also have to apologize for this constant dinging of Google. It tells me the app is featuring a new version. You should upgrade, and I click it and it goes away, and then it just comes back. So I just installed it, but I thought that was kind of dangerous. You know, it might crash the show, but I did it anyway. And it installed it, and it's still showing up. I love you, Google, so much.
Well, the last 15 seconds of our show is a lot what those videos are going to be like when we're doing the day in the working life of the composer. There's going to be a whole lot of that.
Yeah.
But it'd be cool if you think of it as sort of a virtual internship, because beginning composers in particular, the ones who are in school or even thinking of going to school and studying this sort of thing, they want to know what daily life is like for a working composer. It may be just something they're trying to imagine, and possibly they're thinking about what they want to get in this field, but they don't really know what it entails. So some kind of immersion on a day-to-day basis of what composers do could be really valuable for beginners. And if it could be edited in such a way that it was digestible, I think it would be really valuable as an introductory kind of experience.
I agree. Hey, will you cover for me for a second? I'm going to get headphones and plug them in so you guys don't have to hear that dinging.
Okay.
I like the dinging.
It is a really good sound. Yeah, there's a lot of there's a really lot of good sound effects for the various web services and instant messengers that are out there. And, you know, sometimes you're like, oh, okay, that's a sound, and sometimes it's like, wow, that's a really good ear con that those guys have made for that thing that I'm going to be hearing all the time, and you actually don't mind it. Although, obviously, not good to hear that Google ding right now.
Indeed. So looking at our chat room, we'd estimate 300 to 400 people there right now, rounding up slightly. So I'm going to put a question up for the chat room. What types of episodes would you guys like to see, and girls, like to see more of in the coming year? And you can reflect on which episodes of the show you've enjoyed, or maybe stuff that you'd like to see us do that we haven't. But we have an open invitation for suggestions from multitudes in our chat room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good question. And definitely, you know, if not just the chat room, opening up that kind of information on by sending it to us in Twitter or Facebook is super useful. I know one of them is to do a show about implementing audio. We were talking about how boring that is, but it's so important, you know. I wonder if we should do, you know what we should do? We should get together and just do a video of the different experiences that we have and maybe post the video. Maybe not as an episode, but just put it in the Game Audio page, Game Audio Hour page, so people can watch the video.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's good.
Man.
It might also be nice. I don't know. It'd be fun to bring a camera into. I was working on a major studio project and get that perspective too. Because we're kind of bringing the freelancer and some of the mid-sized studio perspective. But wouldn't it be cool to see the day-to-day operations of someone working on something humongous? Assuming we could get access and people would feel comfortable about documenting it.
Yeah, it'd be really cool. There are a couple of really interesting studios that are very focused on video games as well as really big. They can handle some of the big productions. They'll, handle large ensemble VO. They can record 40-piece orchestra if they want to in their space. And they'll work with some of the guys here. Like, I was actually just at a studio a few weeks ago, and they're working with the Konami guys, and I think the Metal Gear guys. I think it is. They didn't actually say that, but it was definitely intimated that that's what was going on there. And some of the things that they do are really cool. And because of the scale of it, they actually do very different things. That's how you're actually going about recording all of these guys together. And yeah, it's not quite like you would have if you were in a small studio and you're just recording each voice actor one by one. And it's also not quite the same as your typical ensemble voice recording. And they're doing things like recording headset mics on everyone and capturing motion capture data because they have the space for it. It's kind of awesome seeing what those other studios are actually able to do. And it's kind of a look into the future because, yeah, that is the realm of those guys with the 8-digit budgets. But gradually, we're going to be doing more of that. The technology is going to be in our hands now, us individual audio contractors.
Yeah. I wish I would have done a tour of Neversoft before they closed. That would have been fun.
Oh, yeah. Neversoft just closed this year. Wow, when was that? September? Or August?
Yeah, sometime around there. And they had their own mocap stage there too. That was so fun, man. So many great memories.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but yeah, that's a good suggestion. Things that we can do for the show. Keep them coming. I'm seeing some great ones in the chat room. Like iCompose talked about covering EQs and stuff. Frida mentioned just the DAW wars alone. iCompose said my favorite word, which is Ableton.
Mm-hmm.
Although I have to admit, I've been spending a lot of time in Logic lately. A lot.
Addictive, isn't it?
It's the workflows is I'm still trying to get used to that, but the more I get used to it, the more I exponentially like Logic. I think that applies to any DAW as you get used to the workflow. You start maybe not Pro Tools. I don't think I like Pro Tools ever. That's terrible of me to say, right? But no, I think it's pretty popular. Feeling that a lot of people don't like Pro Tools. It just seems limited in some ways. But it's because I'm Pro Tools LE. I'm not spending $4 billion on hardware so I can get a better version of Pro Tools. But yeah, Logic, I've been spending a lot of time in there, and I did a bunch of voiceover stuff using Logic rather than Ableton, and it was really fun. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it.
So running with Frida's suggestion, we could have one episode for each major DAW, and someone who's a big proponent could kind of address the show to an audience that is maybe considering which DAW to go with, again, think of the beginner perspective, or just give a sense of perspective to people who are using other DAWs who might be interested in knowing what's on the other side of the fence. That might be an interesting aspect. So I could do Logic, and a colleague could do Ableton if you're hugely into that. And Vince, I don't know what you're working with. Do you also Ableton?
Yeah, I'm a Sonar guy. I'm weird.
Not a bit. I mean, so much of it started on Cakewalk.
Yeah, Cakewalk is... Yeah, not too many people use Cakewalk, although actually a couple of Sony guys still use Cakewalk, like a lot of the heads there, like Chuck Carr and...
They didn't upgrade to Sonar?
Well, yes, I mean Cakewalk Sonar, right? But they're still part of that line, which is really surprising. I'm always surprised to see another Sonar user. Quite honestly, I'm looking forward to making a transition to Reaper sometime, because Reaper just... Oh, wow, that's a fantastic product. I first found Reaper, 2 or 3 years ago, and I just kept track of it, and I thought, wow, this is just getting better and better and better, and it seems like it still has that speed. It seems like that programming team of one is really good at addressing support issues and requests, feature requests from the community. It's pretty amazing, that program.
We used it for Guitar Hero. All the MIDI designers we had to use we had to use Sonar for what we were doing.
Huh. Yeah, I'm really used to dealing with Sonar and the MIDI event list, and even using Cakewalk script every now and then, Cal script.
Yeah.
It is kind of funny seeing the things that I have to do with CalScript because they don't have a native function or a plugin. So that's a little frustrating. But, hey, Sonar is pretty cool.
So you spend your day in Sonar, Mike spends his in Logic, and I spend mine in Ableton.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And yet we're still doing, we're in the same industry, sharing files back and forth with other people who use different DAWs than that. I think that would be my #1 request for DAWs, to find some sort of common export-import option among all the DAWs. The MIDI of DAWs, if you will. The general MIDI, I mean.
Well, yeah, OMF doesn't really do it for us.
Yeah.
It's all right. It's okay if you have just basic voice sessions and that's it. But once you start adding anything else, once you have a few plugins in there and like, okay, how do I handle this? Just doesn't know how to.
All these years doing audio too, Mike taught me something. I didn't know that WAV files held some information in them other than the audio. I always chose AIFF because I was on a Mac, and I just choose WAV when I'm on a PC. Isn't that dumb? I kind of just associate them that way. But Mike, you were saying there's some MIDI, or there's some data that's in a WAV file as well, right?
The timeline position is baked into each WAV file. So if you do a lot of recording in Pro Tools and you're doing lots of takes and the files are all over the timeline, instead of having to zero reference every single audio file, bounce it from zero so you know its relative position, you can just grab those files in Logic or any other DAW, and as long as they're WAV files, you can then tell them to jump back to their original positions in the timeline. Logic has a function called move audio to original record position or something like that. So when I'm doing Pro Tools in the studio, I don't even have to bother loading it into Pro Tools and then spitting it out into Logic. I just grab the raw WAV files, and Logic knows where to put them.
That's awesome. I will say that's missing from Ableton, because I got a project from you with that in place, and it just loaded them all to the front line, to the zero.
All that marker data that can be embedded in WAV files, Sonar is not good with that. A lot of other programs are. SoundForge, I use that, and I'll actually have separate programs for editing all of that data that's in my WAV files. But one of the really neat things, and this is something that I would totally broach once we do a proper implementation episode, is that in all the major middleware tools like Fmod and Wise, you can use that marker data in the WAV file to actually do things in the audio engine.
And with that, you could actually have it do things in the game. So I could have a music file, and because I have some data embedded at a particular point in the file, let's say 2 minutes in, then I can have it trigger a sound file that is in one of my sound banks in there. Or maybe I could actually do some much more elaborate function that's totally not audio related, but it happens always at that 2 minute mark in the music file. And it's always surprising when I talk about this functionality with other audio and music guys in the game industry, and they don't know about that.
I didn't know.
Oh, okay. You should definitely check it out. I do a lot of, well, hey, once this game that I'm working on comes out, you'll definitely hear a lot about that. I actually did something, Flower from a few years back was the first game where I did some really extensive work with embedding data at sample points in WAV files.
Wow. I'm writing it down. That's very cool. Very cool. I didn't. No, I didn't. I've never thought about you. I mean, you know, I know. I often will use MIDI trigger events to trigger all kinds of crazy things, call samples or stuff like that. So you're kind of doing that, right? But you're doing it with WAV files.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that with, doing things like NERPins on MIDI. You know, those non-registered. Yeah, it's kind of like that, but you actually have the sample accuracy. You could just do that.
Wow.
And you can have like all sorts of arbitrary information in there. It's, you know, the way I deal with it, it's basically ASCII strings, and then I can parse those ASCII strings in different ways to, you know, run functions or do particular stuff in the FMOD API. It's pretty cool.
We need a show on that.
We need a show on, unless we had one that I missed, FMOD and WISE. We haven't really talked extensively, or have we? Did we do one when I wasn't around?
I think it would be cool to do one.
Yeah.
I know Alex is in. He's in WISE world.
Mm.
I'm very much in FMOD world at the moment. It might be cool to do sort of a back and forth on things that FMOD does well, things that WISE does well. They're both very good options. FMOD and WISE are not the only options now, though. You know, have you guys actually checked out Fabric?
Yes.
Yeah. Fabric is interesting.
What are they?
Sorry,
what ones would you list? What is the one? There's Miles, right?
Oh yeah, Miles Sound System. That's still going on.
Isn't there that like Minnetonkan one or something like that? Reminds me of Moccasins, the name of their company.
Oh yeah, what is that?
There's a bunch if you look, you know, and then there's
There are a bunch.
built into the
There's
game.
ADX, which is very Japanese, which is good though. I honestly think that ADX is probably going to make a big splash in the Western world in this year, and if not that, definitely the next year, because the technology is just too good. Miles is still going okay. They've been doing some good stuff with their graphical editor and their monitoring for in-game audio engine profiling. It's just gone way better. FMOD and WISE are of course the juggernauts. Fabric is cool. Master Audio, also Unity targeted, is cool. There's a whole bunch of interesting stuff because of the Unity world. You know, FMOD and WISE, they've got all their things working in Unity, but in order to make that work, you need to have a Unity Pro license, which a lot of developers don't have. But Fabric, I think one of the reasons that Fabric has made such a big splash is because you can use Fabric and it only uses Unity functions. So it can compile just using regular Unity. So a lot of developers are using Fabric now.
Oh, nice.
Combined.
Go there anyway.
You know, it might be interesting. We talked about doing an implementation show, and of course we do a lot of interview shows. For 2015, it might be interesting to do an interview with somebody who does audio implementation as their main job. You know, someone who's sort of a Unity jockey and deals with these issues on a day-to-day basis. And that might be a really interesting episode and an angle that we don't normally cover.
And also, we did a show on that
Oh,
with
yeah.
Damien Kastbauer, so check that show out.
Oh yeah, Damien. That was a great episode.
Oh man, he's so much fun. What a brain that guy has. I mean, seriously, he wrote didn't he write the opening to the Wise manual as well?
Yeah, I think he did.
Something major about the Wise manual, which I have not read. But then again, that brings up a good point about software. Like if a software becomes too hard, if I can sit down and just do it, I know I'm going to make mistakes and I'm going to learn through some things, but there's an intuition to software that I need to have. If software has me pull out a manual, it's dead to me. Isn't that terrible? You guys the same way?
Yes.
Yes?
I don't know. I actually like. I like there to be some space for growth in there. If a software is just immediately accessible and you find yourself doing easy things easily, I can see myself only doing those easy things because, this is what I have to do, right? Okay, I'll just do these easy things. But, it's when you break out the manual or when you break out that big old list of functionality, all these random calls. Okay, I don't need, it's not like fmod puts all the different fmod API calls in front of me when I run the program. I mean, I need to read that. I need to write this functionality into the audio manager tool that we're using, and then it's like, okay, cool. Sometimes you need to be able to look and study it, and that's how you actually use it, instead of that functionality just being made easy.
I personally like a combination of tutorials, particularly video tutorials, and reference. The former, because I find that as I get older, I have less and less patience for reading a text description of a graphic interface. So if it's like, please move the mouse pointer to the region development sub-area, something that if you show it to me, I would immediately say, okay, the orange thing in the corner. But in text form in a manual, even with a couple of static images, it's like so tedious. So I really enjoy looking at logic tutorials for advanced tricks and tips. And I like being able to search through a manual if I want to know how to do something. And modern manuals are sometimes wise to this, and they have a section. It's kind of like an index or appendix, but it's based on how do I do this, and they almost setting up like a FAQ. And I think that's really handy. But my patience, when I was in college, I remember reading the language spec for Common Lisp just so I could really, really learn it. And for some reason that was fun. And it might be that Common Lisp was all text-based, so I didn't mind reading about textual things. But when it comes to interface-driven software, I just can't do it. I just need to see it quickly rather than read it in a manual.
You know what I'd like to see? Because before I got into game audio as a programmer, and you still program today, but the one of the things that I've seen as a major change between programming for business software and programming or dealing with any kind of software that you deal with making games is this great little book that they used to create called cookbooks. And whenever because I was a consultant and I had to learn all these different languages, I'd go to Nestle and they were doing something in RPG for AS400s, and I'd go over here and it was C++ or something. And the way I would bone up on a language really quickly was I would get the O'Reilly cookbooks of that language, and the cookbook was just all these little recipes of things that you can create in that language. The first one's always going to be that hello world, but if you wanted to do like massive networking or something, that would be in the last couple of chapters, and you could just fast forward to that, and you could even lift the code. There was oftentimes I would lift the code and then customize that code so that I could make it work on the system that I was on. And I learned so much through cookbooks. I like that microwave kind of way of learning where you just kind of throw it in. You don't know it, you sit down, you've got to do it, and here are like 8 examples and 3 videos from YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
That's my favorite way.
Yeah, those are definitely cool. Although, since Michael mentioned it, video is just awesome. When you see someone actually doing that, they record what is going on in your program, and you actually see that button being hit and that mouse cursor moving over to that quadrant of the screen that you've ignored for some reason or they expect you to see right off the bat. Oh, wow. Video is awesome.
Yeah.
And we're going to see more and more of that these days, which is cool. I'm glad that we have the bandwidth and people are so willing to do video stuff. The manufacturers are doing that. The users are doing that and helping out the manufacturers. Hopefully that doesn't mean the manufacturers are going to, the developers are going to sit on their asses and just hope for the users to basically make them a video manual for them for the software that they put out there.
Yeah. One thing I want to do for the show, thinking ahead, to change the subject a slight bit, kind of back to what Mike said, 'cause it just popped in my brain. And I want to get some people who aren't game audio on here for interviews, but are in the game industry and how they relate to game audio. Like, get a programmer who sits down and says, okay, here's my day to day, and you go, okay, well, what happens? Like, we've got a programmer on our team, just one guy, and he has to deal with the art guy saying, I need you to implement this, and me going, I need you to implement this audio, and he's just always all over the place, And I always wonder to myself, if I'm approaching him in an inconvenient way, because he's such a nice guy, he would never say, dude, stop it, I got enough on my plate, He just goes, okay, I'll get it done. And I always wonder, what is it that he wants me to do? Is it like, does he want me to approach him with all of it at once, or does he enjoy even having that tug and pull in all those different directions? I think that'd be fun, especially getting a designer on the show and saying, okay, you're with your team, you're designing games, and you're now on to the subject of audio. What is it that they talk about in that meeting? Because being in the game industry as long as I have not been to many design, hardcore design meetings. When I go there, the design meeting is about the audio, but they've already made some decisions, And so I wonder what it's like if I were there at the dawn of it, and they haven't even talked about audio yet for this game, and then they go across the table and they go, okay, now let's tackle audio. What are some of the ideas? That would be interesting to see. Why invite the audio guys after you've already made some audio decisions? Why wouldn't they be there early?
Yeah, definitely.
That'd be fun though. But the danger with getting away from, I don't want to get too far away from game audio, also. So that's a danger in those kind of things. I want the show to be about making games with a focus on game audio, but touch all the other disciplines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so much to know about making games in general when it comes to making game audio, and I think that's part of why it's so difficult to deal with that whole implementation topic. When I think about how I've learned to implement on different games, it's always been about not the audio stuff that I'm learning, but how am I implementing into this guy's animation system, or the game system that was created for these guys with their home built engine, or these guys' 2D engine, and it's so implementation is just inextricably connected to the larger process of making games, and the way that everyone makes games. It's such a big and robust space that it's hard not to approach it without just saying, hey, this is how we make games, as opposed to this is how we implement audio for games.
Do you guys have a list of guys in your brain, and gals? When I say guys, I mean that generically. I apologize. People in your brain that could make a game from nuts to bolts. That is soup to nuts. From
Casey Muratori.
Who?
So Casey Muratori is actually one of these Twitch dudes. He's also an old Microsoft dude and an old Rad Game Tools guy. So they made Miles Sound System, among other things. And he's worked as a game programmer for a long time. But right now what he's doing is he's actually doing a series on Twitch TV where every day he broadcasts himself working on this game called Handmade Hero. and he's making the entire game, all the programming, all the assets from scratch. So none of this Unity stuff or middleware stuff even. He actually had a day where he was talking about we're going to make the audio playback engine for this game, starting with low-level functions. Yeah, so if you haven't checked it out, check out Casey Muratori and Handmade Hero.
I'm not going to try to spell that last name. Handmade Hero. That's cool. We got a couple of guys on our show. You know, Ian and Matt. They've both gone. Let's make something up. Birds to feathers with a game. I'm just making up bookended comments at this point.
Bones to sinews.
Cat bites to tendon disintegrations.
Ugh.
That one's for Frida.
Oh no.
Did you hear this, Mike? Frida got bit by her cat, and it's, you know, you have two very vicious, you know, planning your demise animals in your house.
As you say this, one of them is circling my leg like a shark. Keen-eyed observers might have noticed it jump on and off my lap about 5 minutes ago on the air. So I understand this particular pain, and yeah, cats can, you know, this could be another show, but cats can really mess you up. So our sympathies go out to anyone who's dealt with toxoplasmosis or bacterial infections from these seemingly innocent buggers. And
oh, yeah.
But back on the subject of interesting people who do work in game audio implementation, a name I'll throw out is Eric Lawyer, who's a L-O-Y-E-R, I believe, who's Opportune.com. He's, and I apologize if I misspelled his last name because I'm kind of doing this from the hip. He does really interesting interactive stories online that are often accompanied by procedurally generated or directed music, and they're really cool, and they really hint at the next generation of kind of graphic novel-esque storytelling on a computer. And I did a little bit of work on one of his apps called Strange Rain. I wrote music for one of what are essentially musical expansion packs. And he's a fascinating guy and super smart, so let's see if we could lure him on the show.
Yeah, we got so many people.
Cool. I didn't know that you worked with him. I love Eric Lawyer. He's awesome. I first met him back in 2005, and I was introduced to his early Shockwave media stuff, and I thought it was just fantastic. And then I, kept up with him through his iPad stuff, and all the stuff that he's doing that are along the lines of interactive comics or visual novels or however you want to call it. It's fantastic stuff.
And it is really interesting how the music adapts to the experience of moving through a graphic novel, kind of an animated graphic novel. So, and Eric himself is a musician, so I think he'd be a really cool person to have on the show.
Yeah.
We should put our heads together and see if we can do that. And in the unlikely event, Eric, that you're watching, we want you.
I was just going to say something, and there it goes for my brain. Oh, I was going to say, there's some other podcasts out there that people have to listen to. Mentioned in the chat room, Beard Cats and Indie Game Audio. That's a fantastic podcast. I love. There goes. Why the heck does that happen to me? I think when the camera turns on, I forget the names. But the Game Audio podcast is one of my favorites. And what other ones am I listening to? I'd have to bring up iTunes. I wasn't expecting to talk about it, so I didn't have it prepared. But I have a list of podcasts that I just listen to, and of course Sonic State Live. That's my, that's the one by which I try to customize this show to match, because I think they do such a great job. But that's not Game Audio; it's Pro Audio. But it's so much fun to watch that show every Wednesday at 4 in England. No, 4 here. No, 4 in England, 8 here. But anyway, so search them out. You can do a Game Audio search on Twitter, and so many podcasts pop up, or just do a Google for Game Audio podcasts, and you get surprisingly, there's a bunch of them. Well, a handful, a good handful, all inspiring to us.
There's the Game Audio podcast.
What?
Ooh.
So anyway, to avoid dead air.
What is
there
it?
Are no other podcasts.
Totally forgot about Tonebenders.
Tonebenders. That's the one I couldn't think of.
Yes. Yes, Tonebenders is a very cool podcast.
Yeah, yeah. So now let's go positive news in the wake of the sadness of Joe Cocker passing away. Bummed me out.
Kick off the positive news.
Yeah, I know. I told you it's tough. It's tough.
Everything like the opening item for positive news was Joe Cocker's death, so it kind of creates a little speed bump of goodwill and energy there.
I didn't want to deny. You know what's going to happen. The internet is going to happen, and most of the people who listen to the show are going to say, "Yeah, the day Joe Cocker died." So you gotta fess up. Anyway, that's my feel about it. Positive news.
Positive.
Lots of growth in the indie
Wii
game.
U is a good console.
I love my PS4.
The PS4 is cool, but I'm just thinking, like, last year, people thought, man, the Wii U was kind of crap, and Xbox and PS4 are coming out, and they're showing their might. And this year, I think Nintendo has done a pretty good job with the library for the Wii U, and there's some fantastic games on there. Mario Kart 8 is an incredibly enjoyable game. Smash Brothers, incredibly enjoyable. Bayonetta, incredibly enjoyable. Captain Toad, incredibly enjoyable. There's the Wii U has suddenly become a great console all of a sudden, and last year that really wasn't the case.
So I think it's nice.
Hey, that's positive.
And there's a couple of consoles that are all pending. I think it's good to have competitive pressure. To have Sony and Microsoft at each other's throats and jabbing at each other and even making fun of each other in advertising. I think it's good because I think if there were a single predominant console, or if PCs ruled the earth as they did in the 90s, we'd see stagnation. And right now, I don't feel like there's any one system that's ruling them all. So that means more of a push for things to be higher quality.
Yeah, definitely. Nice to see the competition. Nice to see people pushing each other and making the next game.
And I think what we take for granted, because now the phenomenon is a couple of years old, is that there's such a vibrant indie development community, particularly in the mobile space. So we now can have the giant, massive, ambitious projects, but also the single person with a dream who's got hopefully an iPhone SDK and puts out something fairly quickly and realize his or her vision and maybe even make some money, which is fairly recent development. And it feels like we have a lot of cool stuff that's happening kind of in the grassroots level and these giant, massive projects being lobbed over the wall of secrecy from big developers. So kind of wherever you are in the game world, you've got something that speaks to you. And on the audio side, you can be kind of a fairly simple, linear composer, and there's work for you. You can find a mobile game to feature your stuff. You don't have to be well-versed in adaptive audio, or you could dip your toes in that way. But there was a time when to do commercially visible game audio, you kind of had to be at a certain level of sophistication, and now you can really dip your toe in. So there's room for a lot of talent and composers and sound designers in this very rich, diverse spectrum of different types of games.
Yeah, that's true. It's nice to see all these different games and all the different audio that's required in order to make all these different concepts come to life. Yeah.
When I was a programmer, it was so long ago that I ended up working at this place called Mapsys in Columbus, Ohio. Awesome place to work, and they're a subsidiary of IBM. And there was a big deal when I was there about how you could have business casual, because IBM traditionally was all about the stuff, neckties and all that stuff, and it was a big deal. Two things happened. We didn't have to wear a tie, and we could play what's it called? What's the mind game? Minesweeper. It was okay if they caught us playing Minesweeper, and that was a big deal because before then you were getting written up if you were caught playing games while you were chilling out, and not by that company in particular. I mean in general. And I remember thinking, staying from that all the way through to the point where I could, I'm now living in California. I'm working for some tech companies doing programming, and they're saying, just stay home. Don't worry about coming in. Come in on Mondays and Wednesdays. Do your telecommuting, and I remember thinking, my gosh, it's come so far from the tight days when I first got started of neckties and and time clocks, and now it's work from home on half a week and then come in for the other half of the week. And I was so excited about that. And now I'm seeing that trend happen in games. There's always been independent game guys, and that's me. I've only gone in-house for one company. But now I'm seeing more people have that independent experience, but still have that kind of, I work at a company, health insurance and stuff like that. I'm luckily in one of those situations right now, and I'm seeing that all over the place. And I think it's a fantastic growth that the indie game community is starting to experience. It's expensive to build games, so let's cut our costs. Let's not have a building that we have to maintain. Let's just have a tiny little office that we rent somewhere and people can come in for face-to-face meetings when we have to have them. But given the bandwidth that we have now and the tools we have now like Skype and Hangouts, we can have our meetings and see our faces, and we can have our SVN clients and our code being stored securely on a server somewhere, and it doesn't have to be on a bunch of computers in a closet inside a brick and mortar that you own or rent. And so I think that's fantastic that's happening in the game industry at the pace at which it's growing and at the volume at which it's already existing. I think it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Positive note.
Yeah.
I'm counting them, Mike. That's my second one.
We've been doing pretty good about keeping everything positive, and without resorting to tactics like, isn't it so much better than it was in the 90s? Which is not positive, disguised as positive.
Well, anyway, so now Vince, though, you still go in every day, right?
Sorry?
You still go into that game company every day?
Oh, I do. Yeah. I'm pretty much there 5 days a week. 40 hours. It's kind of nice. It's nice being able to see what's going on every day. It's exciting times. I personally really enjoy that. Before that game company, I was over at another studio, and I was also in-house, and I was going in 5 days a week, and I just love the excitement of game development itself.
Yeah. That is true. There are some.
Yeah,
there are definitely some drawbacks to working from home, and one of the ones that gets me, not to get unpositive, it will come around to positivity like Joe Cocker died, and I'm sad about that, but let's talk about fun news. That same kind of segue this is going to be. Is that I don't, even with Skype I have the face-to-face, but I don't have that ability to go over to somebody's office or cube and kind of be part of that implementation process of the audio, Like I might need the audio programmer to do something, and I enjoy, it tickles that programmer side of my brain to go over there to this guy who's way smarter than me and just watch him do his work and try to help a little bit, maybe catch a syntax error or make a suggestion when we get stuck, even though he might not take it, But I feel like I'm part of that process. Right now I just put a request out and it magically shows up in my Unity build. And I appreciate that, but I'm not really part of that system. So having the independence or missing that, the flip side, the positive side, is that I wouldn't want to trade that in for the lack of interruptions that I have through my day. That's the number one thing I don't like about working someplace is having a guy like Kyle show up and stand over my shoulder while I'm implementing something. So as much as I enjoy doing it, I know that guy's got to hate that. And I do it anyway. And now I don't have to worry about that, So, man, that's a big relief.
Getting more positive by the moment.
See how I did it?
It was nice. I was in-house a long time ago, in the late 90s for a game company, and I do have fond memories of the sense of camaraderie and sense of shared mission, which is easier when you're in the same space as your team, no doubt about it. And I like to be able to walk over to see what other people are doing and help them out. So this is sort of a retroactive positive type thing. But that is still very much the norm for many people today. So that's how I can tie it in. But yeah, that's good stuff. And you know, working freelance gives you a certain amount of diversity, and as Kyle says, autonomy, freedom.
Oh, I didn't say autonomy. That word is way too big for my vocabulary.
Just parting it up a little bit, which is also positive.
I knew what you meant. Hey, I want to throw a shout out to Gerard Marino, who gave me his death nog recipe. For those who like eggnog, I think he spells it D-E-T-H. If he probably won't remember me asking them this, but I presumed it was spelled death nog, and I said, "Why do you spell it D-E-T-H?" And he looked at me kind of funny, and I said, "You're leaving the A out." And he goes, "Oh, I was probably just too drunk to remember how to spell it," because this stuff is so chock full of drunkenness. But it's really good.
Also positive.
So, thank you, Gerard, for this brandy, black rum, whiskey, 4 billion eggs and some cream and cinnamon and nutmeg. It's fantastic. It's really good. But anyway, I just wanted to say thanks. Okay, on to something else.
Well, actually, on the subject of thanks, seeing as we are sliding into home for the show in 2014, why not use the last 2 or so minutes of our show to give a little bit of a shout out of thanks to all the guests and all the part-time hosts and people who have folks in the chat room who have always helped us keep the ball in the air by suggesting topics and ideas, and the viewership. Why don't we give a big shout out of thanks to everyone who's with us this year, and hope they hang out in 2015 as well.
Absolutely.
I would clap much louder, but it'll just cause all kinds of stuff. Oh man, I can't thank everybody enough. And I have to apologize most of the time because I can't keep track of the show and the chat window. I seem to post, I post every 30th post. And then when I scroll up past the show, I see direct questions. Hey, Kyle, what about this? Oh, I missed that. Sorry. Yes, thank you, chatties, for being involved. Thank you for allowing me to skip every 30 lines of text. Thank you guys, for being on the show. This thing I kind of forced on you, but I think it's turned into something really, really cool. And all the guests, my God.
Mm-hmm.
So many more to come. And we have... Go ahead.
I would just say it's too bad we don't have a huge list of guests that we could rattle down and thank everyone individually. But
let's go over them. We've had Gerard. We've had
Frida.
Damien. Frida. Matt was a guest and went full-time.
We had Noah Snyder.
Noah. Chanel. This is the danger of naming them. We've had so many, we're going to miss some.
This is why I was talking about a list a little earlier. But since you started, keep on rolling. Go down our iTunes list if you need to. Leave no one out.
Leave no one out. Okay, guys. I feel like the band's going to play me off, trying to come up with all these names of people to thank. So if I missed your name, I apologize, but thank you very much for being on the show. And with that, I guess we should hang up, because that's what you're getting at, Mike. It is 7 o'clock. Our hour is up.
People have personal questions to go to already.
There's one thing I wanted to do, because you cannot end a year retrospective show without a top 10 list, so I kind of forewarned you that I was going to bring up a top 10 list. And since you put me on the spot to think about all the guests, here's your top 10 list. You have to name the top 10 paint colors related to musical influence. Do you think of music in colors? And if so, what would your favorite color be?
I'm glad you said paint colors, because I thought you said painkillers.
We could ask Frida what her top 10 painkillers are right now.
This is a good way to empty out the chat room.
Well, what are your favorite musical colors?
So this is not like a synesthesia thing like I like to compose in light mauve. You mean instruments?
No, I mean kind of synesthesia. I don't see colors when I'm writing, but if I'm not writing and I look at sorry, let me reverse that. If I start writing something, I can feel that's kind of brownish or that's kind of reddish. I'm sure you guys do too.
I'm not sure about that. I'm totally not a synesthete. I was actually thinking more about thinking seriously about different instrumental textures and different performance techniques that I definitely like as a music composer. Like I do things like I love bass clarinet when they play high. I like bassoon when they play high. I love just getting 6 French horns and they're all just really low. Instead of doing the usual 3 high, 3 low. I definitely like those colors, but man, even with that, I'm not sure if there are 10 specific things that I could just rattle off right now.
The chat room did.
Oh, come on. Oh, what? Am I... Okay, yeah. Periwinkle, mauve, turquoise, skin. Anyone remember that Crayola color, skin?
No, we didn't have the mass murderer Crayola box.
I think it was called flesh color, actually.
Oh, was it called flesh? I thought it was called skin. I do remember that they got rid of it relatively recently, though. I will always remember burnt umber, though. I never knew what the heck that was, but hey, burnt umber.
I think that's
You know what burnt umber sounds like?
A good name
Sorry,
for
Mike,
a
say
punk
it again.
band?
I just said I think it's the Earth somewhere. Like the Pirates of Umber.
Oh.
Tolkien, never mind.
It's unfortunately, Mike, your mic is being very cruel to you right now. It's breaking up a lot and it's very dim. All right, well, I'll quit pushing the colors. Purple's my favorite. I compose hit it right off the top. I can't write in purple though. People I respect write in purple. I write more in a watered down version of hot pink.
Well,
that's fun. This show is falling apart. I'm hanging up.
Okay. Oh man.
Happy New Year, guys. Merry Christmas.
Happy New Year. Goodbye, 2014.
Happy Kwanzaa. Everything. Thank you all for being part of the show. We really, really honestly, from our hearts, really appreciate it. We learned so much from you guys as well in the chat room. And the things that when we get a follower on Twitter, it's amazing. I actually take the follower and save it in a folder because it's just so amazing that somebody's following the show. I don't throw that email away, So thank you for being part of the show and bringing up our intelligence and saving my bacon half the time. And thank you guys for being on the show. People I respect and look up to, and man, I wouldn't be able to do what I do if it wasn't for a number of people, you two in particular. So thank you very much.
Back at you. Thank you for having the idea in the first place and arm twisting us all into contributing. Because, as you said, you sort of forced us, but I think we're all happy that you did.
Oh, thank you. Well, torture works, people. That's probably not what I should end 2014 on.
That's a bad way to end this one. Let's...
Okay. Okay. Bye.